Good afternoon. I'm Sangha Kim, Vice President of Samsung Research. Today, I would like to talk about TRUEBench, a framework for evaluating generative models in productivity scenarios. So this is my agenda. As AI has been adopted across industries, there is a growing number of cases showing improved efficiencies and creation of new values. From financial services to healthcare, logistics, manufacturing, automotive, and robotics, AI is being used very widely. However, the ways AI is applied and the benefits expected may vary depending on each industry's characteristics and requirements. Selecting the optimal AI model for a company's needs is not easy. Generative models often produce multiple plausible answers rather than just one single answer. And there's the lack of consistency, and producing reproducible evaluation is very difficult. As a result, a variety of benchmarks are now being developed to improve characteristic model behavior. However, many public benchmarks focus on general language ability and abstract reasoning, making it hard to judge whether a model will meet the diverse requirements and complex scenarios of real productivity tasks. In addition, public benchmarks tend to suffer from data contamination over time. So, leaderboard numbers should not be taken at face value. It's difficult to trust these numbers. Therefore, moreover, because many benchmarks are created primarily in English, they offer limited visibility into multilingual performance. Most are implemented as a single-turn test that measure only one-shot responses, which means they provide little evidence about behavior in real settings like chatbots. Consequently, strong scores on these benchmarks do not guarantee the expected performance. To address this gap, we developed the TRUEBench, a benchmark for selecting models on real business tasks. We prioritize enterprise-relevant use cases, verifies whether models satisfy all stated requirements, and employ reliable, reproducible evaluation methods that minimize subjective human judgment. So we wanted to create a reliable evaluation approach. So, for example, users may sometimes ask a service to draft an email in a simple, free-form manner, but it's also common for the system to require the model to fulfill explicit constraints in order to perform downstream functions and to deliver these services reliably. At the same layer, the model must produce outputs that satisfy those requirements. So the following requirements must be satisfied by the model. Beyond explicitly stated requirements, many tasks may also hinge on implicit constraints, the background assumptions, domain conventions, and safety rules that are not spelled out but must still be satisfied. So to perform the tasks correctly end-to-end, a model has to infer and comply with these latent constraints as well. Accordingly, we analyze real-world requirements and voice of customers, prioritize 10 essential categories, and build input data sets by decomposing tasks into 45 subtasks. We also produced data in 12 major languages, including Korean and English, in collaboration with professional translators and researchers at overseas institutes to evaluate models' multilingual performance. So, we have also drafted an initial checklist for each input, then used an LLM to validate whether that checklist could accurately assess the model's responses. We evaluated along 3 dimensions: correctness, sufficiency, and minimality, and it's iteratively refined the checklist based on those evaluation risks. So as I've said, correctness, sufficiency, and minimality, the 3 dimensions test will be carried out, and we have repeatedly corrected the checklist. Using the finalized checklist, we evaluated each model output against the input. If all requirements are satisfied, the sample is marked pass, and if any requirement is missed, it will be marked fail. So it's going to be either pass or any single missing will cause failure. This mirrors the strict constraints in real production system, and by enforcing an explicit rubric helps reduce bias in LLM judged evaluation. So we wanted to create a clear guideline to minimize bias issues. So this automatic pipeline is now published in Hugging Face leaderboard. Through this site, you will be able to look at the leaderboard of TRUEBench. So on the site, you will see 10 category descriptions along with the representative sample data sets for each of those 10 categories. Because of the concerns over data contamination, we have decided to provide just the sample data sets and 10 categories and 45 sub-tasks. We have visualized all the information, and by checking the category scores, you can see what kind of characteristics the model has, which model is strong for inference, which is strong against hallucination or for safety. And through the leaderboard, you can measure the multilingual performance for 12 languages. So including 12 languages, including English and Korean, we can analyze the model's performance for key languages, and we provide these visual services. Beyond model quality, we also assess response efficiency. And the dashboard provides a distribution plot for performance versus response length of number of output tokens. So as you can see on the screen, we provide the distribution graph. For response length, we report both the median total output tokens and the median tokens for the final answer segment, enabling apples to apples comparison across models. Through this, we can we can measure the efficiency of the model's response. And if you go to this site, you will see submit button, and you can submit the model with your chosen performance tuning parameters and run the evaluation, and the results are reflected on the leaderboard. To prevent indiscriminate testing, there are submission limits per model and per organization. And after we extract the evaluation results, the results will be reflected in the leaderboard, and the entire process is automated. As I've said, to prevent indiscriminate testing, we have limits per model and per organization, and only users belonging to the model's Hugging Face organization may submit. And once you enter the site, you will be able to see the ranking by TRUEBench. There are open rate models that are already evaluated, and you can check their ranking. In Samsung Electronics, We have in-house generative model, Samsung Gauss 2, and through TRUEBench, we have carried out their performance evaluation. When we opened Gauss 2 last year, the current category performance now has been improved. And on the left-hand chart, you can see that we are continuously improving the performance, and the right-hand chart shows the language performance evaluation. TRUEBench was also used to check the Gauss evaluation, and when we compare this to others, we can check that TRUEBenchmark has evaluated our Gauss 2 in comparison to other open models, has excellent functions and performance, as you can see on the right-hand chart. When you look at the number of tokens and quality, the quality was great for response. And through this, when compared to publicly released open weight models, Gauss 2 shows superior performance considering quality relative to output token length. And our future plan, we are going to create a lot more detailed tasks to identify the optimal models for various use cases. And we are also going to expand the category to accommodate complicated agent task execution capability. So this link that you can see on the screen will take you to the TRUEBench's overall leaderboard. That is the end of my presentation, and we have received some questions beforehand, so let me answer that question now. First is, using the current LLM, how can we identify the gap between LLM technology and expert productivity who's not familiar with LLM technology? There could be 20, sometimes more than 20 points based on benchmark, meaning that when you're answering within orchestration, based on response logic, even if it's the same model, the performance can vary greatly. Second question is, when new up-to-date data is needed for law and medicine, do you have any know-how to reduce the hallucination? Hallucination sometimes creates difficulties in being used. Hallucination is not all bad, though. As you know, when you are creating creative work, some level of hallucination can enrich your content. But as you have mentioned, for law and medicine, you would need fact-based, precise answers. And in this case, in generative AI, hallucination is an ongoing task that we need to tackle. Of course, we try to reduce it, and by having a more refined and precise prompt, we can improve this, and we can also do a lot of search and retrieval of more fact-based information and give that to LLM to refer to, so that LLM can refer to more fact-based information in answering. And in the process of answering, they can also check the reference information. By adding the reference, we can reduce hallucination and make it more productive. Third question is, does Samsung also have SLLM for each device for training? Actually, Samsung has models of different size, and when we are implementing this based on the MPU of the product, we carry out additional optimization and quantization. 4, after introducing LLM-based productivity tool, what kind of feedback have you received? In this case, there were 2 key cases. As I've mentioned before, TRUEBench, before that, overall benchmark usually performed a single term-based performance, and then look at apply this in dialogue or conversation-based services, so therefore lacking in guarantee for multi-turn. If you're using tool here, when the tool misfunctions, that could be a problem. And second is when you're asking and giving the answers to users or services, there is a gap. Users sometimes, as long as you give the answers that humans can understand, they will be able to cover any flaws. But in the service, you have to give a clear answer and based on facts and clear formats. Fifth, LLM-based productivity tool is used in various fields, but for time, resources, and securities, there are limitations or constraints. Can you give us any case studies for reflecting those constraints? For security, because of the security issues, they sometimes use on-premise board or use it on castration in make sure that there is no security issues in calling the LLM. And for time and resources, GPU resource serving or other efficiency can be resolved through model sizing or quantization that will accelerate the speed or reduce the use of resources or reduce the number of GPUs used after office hours. Number 6, what kind of AI functions do you think your functions can be differentiated from other AI? Samsung Electronics has a lot of workflows, and our Gauss understands that better than others so that it can better understand the workflow in and outside the company, therefore recommend us to the best tools. Generative AI performance itself is important, and orchestration is also important so that the tools can be called right in the exact time it is needed. And we should try to reduce hallucination so that we can provide more accurate information. That is the focus of our research area. So that concludes all the Q&As. Thank you.